Hello my dear friends and welcome to my channel. Don't forget to make yourself a cup of tea because today we have very interesting stories and one of them is a story about an OP's family who destroyed the birthday celebration for OP for the rest of OP's life since OP was 10. It's a wild one, so don't forget to subscribe and I hope you'll enjoy it. My aunt, dad, sister has always been the textbook entitled idiot. When I was a kid, she never missed an opportunity to make me feel like garbage. From thinly veiled insults to outright verbal and emotional abuse, she threw what she could at me in an attempt to break me. Of course, the disgust she felt for me and the faults she found in my dad's parenting never stopped her from mooching stuff off of him or asking him for favors without ever giving anything in return. She and her husband considered their son to be a gift from the heavens, and he too grew up to be a narcissistic bully who loved to torment me, even though I was 7 years younger than him. My mom passed away when I was 1 year old. This is about the time she, along with her son, ruined my 10th birthday. This incident resulted in me being put off of birthdays and deciding to never celebrate them again. I just couldn't see them as a cause for celebration. My entire extended family, which included the said aunt, uncle and cousin along with some other relatives were at our home and my dad and stepmom had gone out to run some errands. My cousin had invited some of his friends over, even though my dad and stepmom didn't know them. My dad allowed them to come after my aunt whined incessantly about how her son would be bored if his friends were not there. I remember sitting in my room and playing with my dog. I knew my cousin would be down there and I usually did what I could to avoid him. At that time I suffered from a pretty bad stutter and when I was upset or angry, it only got worse. This is something my cousin loved to make fun of and of course, my birthday would be no different. He demanded that I come downstairs to talk to his friends. When I refused, his mother told me to stop being rude and do as I was told. I was a powerless kid so I really had no other choice. I went down to the living room and my cousin introduced me to his buddies in his usual condescending way as the birthday girl. He handed me a novel and told me to read out loud. I tried to read properly, but failed. I was surrounded with judgmental stares and it made me nervous. I stuttered, which is exactly what my cousin was hoping for. He and his friends began to snicker. I got angry and stopped reading. Cousin called me a freak, his friends looked at me as though I was on display at a zoo exhibit. I wanted to prove them wrong, that I wasn't a freak, that I could read. I tried reading again. This time, on account of me being angry, the stutter was much worse. My cousin decided to mock my stutter and all but one of his friends roared with laughter. The one that actually noticed my tears told the other to knock it off. He asked if I was okay. My cousin told him not to bother, it's just a joke and that I was just an oversensitive baby. My rage was boiling over and I threw the book at my cousin's face and stomped out. My aunt had seen what had happened and decided to pull me by my hair and drag me back to the living room. She told me to apologize to my cousin. I refused. She told me I needed to be taught a lesson for being a brat. I tried to tell her what had happened. She chuckled and said, "So what? He's your cousin and he's older than you. You need to respect him. Now apologize." I refused again. This time with a no. "I hate you. I hate all of you." All the while crying and shaking with anger. This didn't sit well with my aunt and she slapped me. She told me I was a troublemaker just like my mother had been. That she knew the day I was born that there was something wrong with me. That an evil idiot like my mother couldn't possibly produce a normal kid. This was it. I balled up my fist and connected it to my aunt's face. By now, all the other relatives had heard the commotion and had gathered in the living room. The moment my fist connected with my aunt is when my dad and stepmom walked in through the front door. The aunt started fake crying. She berated my father for not raising me right and went on and on about how I was a violent, ill-mannered idiot etc. The other relatives too expressed their disappointment in me. My dad asked me what the hell I thought I was doing. I tried to tell him what my cousin had done and what my aunt had said about my mother. Unfortunately, my stuttering reared its ugly head again and all that came out of my mouth was gibberish. My tears were flowing again. In the meantime, my cousin had decided to take all his friends and bail. I was punished for my beastly conduct. My birthday celebration was cancelled. My dad called my friends and asked them not to come over. I didn't cut any cake, the presents I was to receive from my parents were stocked away. I was banished to my room and stayed there for the rest of the day. I ate lunch and dinner alone. The next morning, no one spoke to me. I was given my breakfast platter which I ate in my room. That afternoon, my cousin's friend, the one who had told them to stop bullying me, came over. He told my dad what my cousin had done and what my aunt had said. My dad sat me down and apologized to me, but added that it was still wrong of me to punch my aunt. I just sat there silently. I was emotionally numb. My dad kept telling me he loved me and that he was sorry. I just coldly stared at him. My stepmom suggested a belated birthday celebration. I refused. I told them I didn't want a birthday party and that I wouldn't celebrate my birthday ever again. I kept my word. Every year since that day, my parents would ask me what I wanted for my birthday and I always replied nothing at all. I would ask them not to get any cakes and not to invite any guests. The day I was born now meant nothing to me. Even now, after all these years, I don't celebrate my birthday. Instead, I celebrate the day I landed the job that enabled me to move away from my family and start a new life. I consider it the day of my rebirth. It was the day I was able to leave all the pain and anger behind and could plan for a life that I would live on my own terms. Update. My aunt, Dad's older sister, has always doted on her son. Here where I'm living, son preference is a pervasive social disease. Most people, regardless of social status, etc., place great value in their sons, and daughters are seen as a burden on the family. My aunt was no exception. Ever since she was a kid, she had had this messed up, one-sided competition with my dad. I, a woman, am my dad's only child. This gave her an opportunity to constantly make passive-aggressive remarks that my dad was so unfortunate to have a daughter, his line would end with him, etc. She and her husband spoiled their son to the point that he became a narcissistic bully. He would often mock my stutter, cheat on his girlfriends, and make unreasonable demands of his parents. But did they ever try to discipline him or say no to him? Of course not. Their prince could do no wrong. If he made fun of my stutter, I was a piece of trash who deserved it. If he cheated on his girlfriend, she must have neglected him. If he made cruel remarks about his boss, well, he's a man. You get the picture. Years went by and he just kept getting worse. When he was living with them, he at least pretended to respect them. But when he landed a very high-paying job and was able to move out, it was as if he forgot they even existed. He and his wife hardly ever spoke to them. By now my uncle had retired. My aunt had never worked. They had very little money left as they had spent it all on their son. They had paid for his education, his vacations, his wedding. Now they barely had enough to put food on the table. My dad would help them as much as he could. In 2011, my cousin's wife became pregnant and during her third trimester, my cousin asked his parents to move in with him and his wife. We all knew it was because they wanted free caretakers for the baby. But my aunt just couldn't shut up about how wonderful her son was for wanting to take care of his parents. By now I was well established in my field and was looking forward to a successful career. She taunted my father one last time, saying my education and career would be of no use as I was just a daughter and could never take care of him the way her son would take care of her. My dad just smiled and wished her well. She and her husband moved to my cousin's, who lived in another city, place. My dad would often receive calls and texts from her bragging about what a great life they had. She sounded a bit too chipper. My dad began to suspect that all wasn't right. About 6 months after they had left, my dad said he was going to visit them as he was getting worried about his sister. He asked me and my stepmom to accompany him. We reluctantly agreed. We arrived at their place, and it is truly stunning. A luxurious home in a posh locality. This was no surprise as my cousin is very successful. What did shock us was the way he was treating his parents. They were practically servants in his house. My aunt tended to the baby, cooked and cleaned. My uncle tended to the gardens, took care of the cars, and went grocery shopping, etc. My cousin could easily afford maids, drivers, etc., but why would he, when his parents were now his free servants? What was even worse was the way he treated them. My cousin-in-law would often yell at my aunt and would just order her around. My uncle had this vacant and defeated look in his eyes. I had never liked him, but couldn't help but feel a tinge of pity. My dad took my aunt aside and told her she didn't have to live like this. That he could make arrangements for her and her husband. My aunt put on a fake smile and said, "Nonsense, we couldn't be happier." Anytime my cousin or his wife said something cruel to her or told her to shut up when she tried to make conversation, My aunt would put on a smile and act as though it was just the sweetest thing anyone had ever said to her. It would have been funny had it not been so pitiful. Memories of all the horrible things she had said and done to me and my dad were still fresh in my mind. And the schadenfreude was real. My aunt's fake rueful smiles and the way she tried to cover up how her son was really treating her is the cringiest thing I have ever seen. My aunt and uncle often stressed the importance of having a male heir. They claimed that their son would be their provider while I, a daughter, would be a burden till the day I was married off. Well, surprise. The exact opposite has happened. While they were basically servants in their son's house and I'm unmarried, I have a loving partner, wonderful pets and friends and a great career. My dad has his own restaurant and seems very happy with his work. Entitled parents often assume that their kid can be an idiot to everyone else, but he would never do that to them. Boy, are they in for a shock. OP, I'm sorry you had to bear that nightmare at the age of 10, it's terrible. I hope you are happy now with your life, and I'm glad to hear these people got what they really deserved. This story is the story of a good friend of mine's grandfather and how he dealt with his inheritance in a very unique way. He had 2 sons, and each of them also had 2 sons. In the last half year of his life, my friend and I visited him every morning and every evening. You see, he did not want to go into a retirement home, and apart from getting ready in the morning and in the evening, he did not really need help. Now I need to explain something real quick. Back in the day we still had mandatory service in the army for 12 months, but there were several ways around it. I will only explain the most common way, since it is connected to our story. You see, instead of going to the army, you could say you refused to go to the army for ethical reasons. But that meant you had to go into civil service. Civil service could be any kind of job that, in a wider sense, is a service to society. So these jobs ranged from kindergarten to retirement homes and anything in between, like hospitals, homes for the physically or mentally disabled, Meals on Wheels, pretty much anything you can imagine. You would be paid for that time the same amount of money you would get in the army and had the right to certain perks like a free room, health insurance, work clothes, etc., the same stuff any soldier gets. Plus, since soldiers get free food, you either get free food or a food allowance. I did my time in a retirement home and it was an awesome experience. I think a job like that really widens your horizon as young arrogant crap and really matures you and shows you what is actually important in life. Back to the story. I was just done with my time in the retirement home and for 1 year I wanted to work around and make some money. Then one of my best friends comes to me and tells me he needs my help. His grandpa can no longer do everything by himself, but really only needs help in the morning to get ready and in the evening. Since I have learned how to do this from real professionals, he asks me to show him, so his grandpa does not yet have to go into a retirement home. He later admitted grandpa said he would rather kill himself than get into a nursing home, and he seemed really serious about it. He did not tell me at the time, since he did not want to pressure me into help like that, which I really appreciated. He was one of my best friends, and I really liked his grandpa. When I was younger, I did not have a grandpa, but we visited him all the time, and I became his unofficial 5th grandson, so of course I said yes. The original plan was to show him for 2 or 3 weeks, and then observe him for another 2 or 3 weeks, then he would do it on his own. But we ended up doing it together for over half a year, then grandpa had a stroke and died within 2 days in the hospital. 2 days later my friend asked me to come with him to the lawyer, where the last will would be spread. His grandfather had specifically asked that his will should be read the day before he gets buried, which is quite unusual, but not illegal as such. I asked why he wanted me there, and he told me the lawyer had officially invited me, since grandpa had left me something as a thank you for my service. I was a bit embarrassed, but also happy that grandpa had thought so highly of my service, he even put me in his last will. Now my friend's dad is an entitled idiot, and the same goes for his uncle. We arrived there and went into the room. My friend is F. You get 3 guesses who me is. Entitled is ED and entitled uncle is EU. ED, to me. Why the hell are you here? I know that dad called you in jest his 5th grandkid, but this is for real family. EU. I bet the little gold digger hoped he would get some money in the will. Me. I was asked to be here by the lawyer, take it up with him. I have no idea why I am here. ED. If you pulled something to get to his money I will sue you so hard even your kids will still need lawyers. F. Show some respect and stop shouting. I know you two did not really give a crap about your dad, but show at least a minimum of respect. You. How dare you talk like that to your elders, you little idiot. F. You two get exactly as much respect from me as you showed your own father none. He really shouted the last word, and it finally shut the two up. We sat down and still had to wait for the other two grandkids to arrive. The two sat right behind us, and what they talked about really made my blood boil. Apparently they had both gotten new cars, new jewelry for the wife, and had planned a huge holiday. All that was paid for by credit, and they had planned to pay for it with the inheritance. None of them said even a word about missing him, being sad that he died, nothing. Only the money. They seemed to be in competition who could spend the inheritance faster the way they planned away the money. Then finally we were all there and a lawyer read out a short letter. What I tell you here is a much shortened version, but the real thing was several pages long. But it boils down to this. In recent years I realized more and more that some people in my family cared a lot more about me than others. I am especially disappointed in my two sons, but I wanted to be really fair and not biased, so I came up with a points system. Letter or phone call. 1 point plus 1 extra if it is very long. Visit. 2 points per hour plus 1 point per hour of travel to me and back. Helping me out with something. 3 points per hour. This is the final result over the last 3 years of my life. Ed. 8 points. EU. 10 points. EU Kid 1. 150 points. EU Kid 2. 133 points. F Brother. 288 points. F. 7341. Me. 5883. My lawyer has already liquidated most of my assets except the house. Once it is sold, the money will be divided by the points, so we know what each point is worth, and then every person gets a share of the money according to his points. For about a minute you could hear a pin drop, then both ED and EU started shouting at the same time that they knew we would have pulled something, and this will would never stand. Of course they tried to sue EU, his kids and ED together, but they lost, and there was a secret clause in the will that if someone sues against the will, he loses his share of the inheritance. It took nearly 3 years until all the lawsuits were over. I was blown away when we finally got the money. I am not naming a sum, but it was way more than I felt comfortable accepting, so I wanted to give at least some of it to the other 3 grandkids, but my friend finally convinced me to accept by saying to me, "You cared for him when he needed you, without expecting anything for it, which makes you 10 times more his family than any of those idiots." They got what they deserved. It's funny how they got right to Grandpa's trap, proving they are there only for his money. It's horrible to realize, but OP is way more a family to his friend's grandpa than his real family. Well guys, that's it for today. If you end up enjoying this video, please consider subscribing, and if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'm gonna link it right here. The story is about an OP and unexpected call from her sister, who demanded OP's niece live with OP, while OP would cook and clean for niece. Check this out if you haven't, and I'll see you in my next video.